Hey there, Zach here. Before we get started today, I want to invite you to our very first live Down the Wormhole episode. We've never done anything like this before, so we have no idea how it's going to go. Probably spectacular and without a hitch and no problems whatsoever, because isn't that how everything goes? Anyway, on August the 21st, so that's a Friday, August 21st, from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and I was told I needed to mention that, 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, we will be having our very first ever live episode. There'll be video and audio and previous guests, and we will be doing a total listener-focused episode where we will just be answering your questions, your thoughts, whatever it is that is on your mind. We want to talk about that. So before we do this, we need to know what's on your mind. So if you wouldn't mind heading on over to our website at downthewormhole.com, that is where all the information is for all of our social media accounts as well as our email accounts. And go find wherever is your preferred social media or email account and send us some questions. What's on your mind? These can be questions about science, questions about religion, questions about faith and spirituality, about society, about where we are in the world, about Adam's favorite Thomas Paine quote. Whatever it is that is on your heart and mind, we want to know. And so we will be live streaming this episode on Facebook as well as our YouTube page. All of those links will be available the day of on downthewormhole.com. So everything will be in one place. Make it super easy for you to join us then. So I would invite you to mark that on your calendar. Again, Friday the 21st from 4 to 5 Eastern Time. And join us as we try something new and weird and potentially wonderful. If you can't make it, don't worry. That episode will be available the next Wednesday at our normal time. But there is just something magical and wonderful and unedited about a live show. So, by the way, we're doing this to celebrate our 1-year anniversary. I should have mentioned that at the top. Isn't that wonderful? It has been more than a year now that we have been a podcast together, and we are so grateful to you, the listener, for joining us on this journey. You have been more supportive than I can express. I am so thankful for you. Actually, I should also say that this podcast has made the final slate for the People's Choice Podcast Awards, the 15th Annual Podcast Awards. And the first round was determined by listener votes. So the top 10 in each category in terms of listener votes got moved into this next slate. And this slate will be voted on by 5,000 people. In terms of the quality of the podcasts. And so making it into this first round is a sign that you care and that you are on board. And I cannot tell you how happy that makes me feel, how strangely exposed that makes me feel too. This was just a dream a year ago, and here we are today. So thank you to all of our listeners. And again, make sure you join us for this live episode next week. Is going to be wild, and submit your questions. And so now, without further ado, Kendra, take the mic.
Hi, everyone. This is your Down the Wormhole co-host, Kendra Holt-Moore. I'm a PhD student at Boston University. And this week, it's my turn to recommend a podcast episode that is relevant to our Race and Racism miniseries that we've been doing over the last several weeks. And so the episode I'd like to share with you today is one from the podcast called Armchair Expert with Dak Shepard as the host. And if you've never listened to this podcast before, Dax Shepard, he just interviews people and asks them interesting questions to get to know who they are and what they do. And he talks to a lot of really interesting people, so that's a pretty easy task to do. And one of the recent episodes from this year, he sat down with Ibram X. Kendi. And if you don't know who Ibram X. Kendi is, he is a leading scholar on race and racism research. And he just recently came to Boston University and is launching the Center for Antiracist Research. And so because I am a PhD student at Boston University, this has sparked my interest, and I had not been acquainted with Dr. Kendi's work before, but I have been trying to familiarize myself with who he is and the work that he does, and it's an exciting addition to the Boston University community to gain a scholar like Dr. Kendi. And so I think that this interview between Dax Shepard and Ibram X. Kendi is a great one if you are just interested in learning about who Kendi is, and if you are interested in maybe reading some of his work. But it's a very casual conversation. It's a very chill vibe, which is common on the Armchair Expert Podcast. But I recommend it for people who are feeling a little bit lost in how to use the correct terminology, and just like knowing what words mean when we're talking about race and racism. Like, what is racism? How do you talk about the difference between individual racism versus systemic racism? Is individual racism a thing? What is anti-racism? And I think that Dr. Kendi does a good job of laying down terms and articulating clearly what those words mean and how we should understand them and how they help us to affect change and be more responsible speakers whenever we have conversations about race and racism with our friends and family or other people in the spaces that we interact in every day. And so I hope that you find this conversation interesting and enlightening. And before I sign off, I just want to remind you that after this intro is over, to find this episode, be sure to click the link in the description of this podcast episode, and you will find the interview with Ibram X. Kendi. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy.